Welcome back to Between the Levees. I was talking actually to a new fan of the show on LinkedIn about 2 weeks ago, and he introduced me to an individual in the following manner, and I quote, I met a very articulate and interesting gay captain about a week ago. Great guy and a very professional towboater. He'd be great to have on the show if you ever get that far into it. I'd like to welcome Captain Brandon Phillips to the show, as I am indeed that far into it. Brandon, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we've got about a 20-year career to talk through. Um, but tell me first, I've not had at least any openly gay individuals on the show yet. I remember, I think in second grade, I was 6, got my first crush on a female. I knew then, of course, my orientation. Was there any moment in time that you remember when you realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm maybe a little bit different than all these other people, and when you realize that, hey, I'm attracted to the same sex.
I think I've always had an idea that there was something different about me. I don't think that I necessarily knew what that difference was. I would say when I was probably seven or eight, um, I think I had my first attraction towards a young man that I was friends with.
So roughly the same developmental phase as any other child. Well, tell me about your childhood. Where were you born? What did your parents do? What led you eventually to the industry?
I was born in Peoria, Illinois. I grew up in Washington, Illinois, which is across the river from Peoria. My dad was a welder, later on became a truck driver. My mom worked in all kinds of different things. She did a lot of management and eventually healthcare, specializing in autism um, and shoot, I'm having a blank, and it's the Alzheimer's. That's the other thing she worked on. So I have two older brothers and an older sister. I'm the baby of the family. Um, just grew up in Washington mostly. Family was close. I Most of my childhood I wanted to be a cop. That was what I eventually went to school for. In high school, I towards my senior year there, I went to work for a casino boat there in Peoria, and I worked there as a valet until I was old enough to actually work on the boat. And once I got on the boat, was a deckhand. Uh, did that for about a year. Was a an engineer for a short period of time, about 2 years. Left there and got tired of working on the boat that didn't go anywhere. So it's kind of boring, but it was a good job. I had a lot of fun there. I later on moved on to a fleeting company and worked on. I started out as a barge sweeper, did a little bit of barge maintenance, then eventually became a deckhand. That particular fleet, we kind of did everything. So I was still a barge sweeper, even though I was a deckhand. So later on, moved on to what we call shuttle boats, just running from Peoria to Lamont and doing sand runs and stuff like that. And I thought about you know, changing careers. I'd been going to school for law enforcement and fire science. I was a volunteer firefighter, worked for county emergency management agency, did a lot of different things. I've never really done just one job. I mean, the entire time I worked on towboats, I've always had another job at home. So eventually went out to line boats. You know, decked for about 10 years. Um, Worked my way up. I've been on the lower, been on the upper, been on the Arkansas, the Ohio, bunch of different rivers. Just doing odds and end things. If there's ever something I wanted to try, I did it. So I didn't always like it, didn't always stick with it, but
Well, if I may, how did your sexual orientation play into your upbringing? Any challenges at school, socially, and then, of course, touching on branching into the industry, how did you find your way onto that casino boat?
Uh, so in school, I wasn't out. I never intended to be out. I did eventually come out my senior year at prom. That was a mistake in the sense that it was very liberating. It felt good to actually not have to hide who I was. Uh, but the ass kickings after the fact were not fun. So, um, but I mean, it's a different time, and people tend to be afraid of what they don't understand. So, the casino was hiring. I want to say I had a friend that worked in valet, and it suggested that it'd be a good job at the time. I think I was working at a fast food joint, and I was hating it. I wanted something different. So I had no intentions of really working on a boat in general. I mean that is just kind of something that fell into my lap. When I worked there at the casino, it was I was out there just because I knew people that worked there that knew me. There was no way for me to hide it. Everybody knew. So um, I really liked it. They treated me very well. It was a really fun job. Um, Through that job, I kind of I wasn't sure whether I wanted to continue to pursue law enforcement or firefighting. Um, I was actually thinking about going to work in the ocean, and I thought, maybe one of these days after I get to where I'm good enough and I got enough sea time to get my QMed or my AV special, I figured, okay, well maybe I'll go try the ocean out, and that's kind of how my career progressed. I went to work on the tugs because I thought, okay, well this will give me more deck time. It'll help towards my license. When I did the line haul thing, it was kind of a, if I do this, then, if I can handle living on a boat for 30 days and I can land, I could handle living on an ocean going boat for up to 4 or 6 months. Um, Unfortunately, the river industry is sometimes like a black hole. You kind of get sucked into it and you can't get out of it. Not necessarily in a bad way. My dream was to be a cop, and I never ever imagined that I would ever want to be anything else. And you know, after several years of working in the industry, there's not anything else I'd rather do.
I imagine you make a little bit more money than you would have as a cop with a different kind of stress.
Yeah, so I did eventually get all the certifications and stuff that I needed to go into law enforcement and firefighting. And there was an opening with the state fire marshal's office as an arson investigator, and I had applied for that. And I I got the job, but it was $36,000 a year, and I was already making 60 as a deckhand. And I had to weigh those choices, be financially secure or take the dream job, and come to find out later on that most of the arson investigators for a state fire marshal's office are all retired firefighters, and that's why they can afford to do that job. So, anyways, I obviously chose financial security, uh, and in the long run, I chose what I feel it'd be is happiness. I mean, I have a wonderful job with a wonderful crew, and I have the ability to see the sunrise and sunset just about every day. I see some pretty crazy stuff on the river, and it's always interesting.
I know you said you've run on just about every river. Where do you run now, and what horsepower boat? What kind of tow are you shoving?
So on the upper, I push 15. On the lower, I can push up to 25. I'm on a 5,600 horsepower jet boat. I run pretty much the upper, the Ohio, the Illinois River, and occasionally on the lower. In the past, we've run the Arkansas River. I really like the Arkansas River. It's a pretty river. But yeah, we run a little bit everywhere. Obviously not on the inland waterways, but mainly the western rivers.
Any interesting stories from every one of those rivers from your time out there?
Um, Well, when I was on the Arkansas River, I was a steersman, and I had been doing most of my steering from St. Louis to Cairo, and so I was very familiar with current. And anybody that runs the Arkansas River knows that current is really only there when the water's up. It's kind of a dead pool, and that brings challenges when you even when you're northbound. So one of the stories that my guys like to hear a lot is I'm big into talking about my mistakes because I feel like that's the only way that we can learn and be better. And so one of the mistakes I made was not giving myself enough time to stop. And in dead water, you know, you can knock it out of gear and float for a long time, especially with a bigger toe. And I can't remember if we had 9 or 12, but we didn't have 15. I know that for sure because that river's not the best one to run with 15. But anyways, there was a southbounder coming, and I was going to a waiting spot, and I knocked it out of gear, and I mean we're just floating along, you know, probably 4 mile an hour, and it was right around watch change, and the pilot comes up, and you know he's looking out the windows, looking at what's going on. And he's like, "You, what are you doing?" I was like, "I'm going to be pulling over for a southbounder." Well, by this point, I had allowed myself to get some point towards the bank, which was not a good idea. And he's like, "Don't you think you ought to start backing on this thing?" I was like, "Yeah, I guess, yeah." And he's like, "Well, I'd start now if I were you." So I started backing on it. Well, we're faced up to boxes, and sometimes when you're faced up to boxes and you back hard on it, you can actually cause yourself to speed up a little bit, and that's kind of what happened. And nonetheless, I landed pretty hard on the bank there, and it was kind of stressful, intense. And about that time, the pilot he's like, "Jesus, look at them cows! I think you hit a cow." And I was like, "What?" And he hands me the binoculars. I look out the window and there's just cows scattering, just running, wondering what the hell this barge is doing up in their field. So, nonetheless, it's kind of an embarrassing story, but you know, it's what happens when you're learning, I guess. You know, it's I don't know, but you know, they say it takes $1 million to make a pilot. Thankfully, I didn't break anything or damage anything, but still, you know, that's it's a learning experience, that's for sure.
The toe didn't break up at all.
Nope, I think I only hit the bank at about 1 mile an hour. It wasn't it was kind of a glancing blow. I was taking my stern in as I was backing, so that head was coming out all the time, but nonetheless, it still scared the cows.
Yeah, did they all get away?
Yes, yes, we sent the maid out, checked the toe, checked to make sure we didn't get any cows. So there's actually, I believe, a fence or something, and we didn't even get close to it, but just the commotion alone kind of scared the cows. Probably woke them up. You know, it was probably 11:30, 11:45 at night.
Anything interesting come to mind from time on the Illinois?
Uh, there's all kinds of things on the Illinois River. You know, it's I remember my first time going up through Lockport Lock and Dam, and my mate was adamant. You know, it was a nice day out. He's adamant you wear a rain suit, and you know, adamant that you take a shower after the lock. And mainly because the canal up there back then, and even way before I was even on deck, was very polluted. You know, they had all kinds of nicknames for that, and you'd see all kinds of trash, some pretty nasty stuff floating in the river up there. And it's funny because they have a drop gate, and the seals on it aren't the greatest, so you know that water be pouring out. And if you're on the head, you know you're going to get soaked. And we shoved out of the lock, and they used to have this big sign, and it was blue and white, and it said, "Caution: water is not suitable for human contact. If exposed, call this number." You know, and I think they still have those signs up there, although it's a lot cleaner now than it was back then. But yeah, I you know the fleet that I worked in up there, you know, it was busy. You know, it's funny looking at it today versus back then. I mean, you had a whole lot more room in that stretch of the river, and it's amazing how much things will change over the years without maintenance, and how congested things get. It's uh, kind of funny how you see different fleets will be full of barges for 5-10 years or more, and then the next thing they don't have very many barges, they don't hold very many barges, they don't use very many of their fleets, and then eventually it'll come back around and they'll be busy again, just different areas and whatnot. So um but yeah, no, it's you know I remember doing a transit. We're taking a deck barge with a down to Peoria, and we come through the McCluggage Bridge, and from the time to the McCluggage Bridge to MacArthur, we we had over 150 Asian carp on the boat. I mean, they just beating the crap out of the boat, jumping on, and it was the first time I'd always heard that they were an issue, and up in the fleet that I worked in, we had them, but they weren't that bad. And I think the following summer, there was a news report of a gal that was on a jet ski, and Asian carp had jumped up, knocked her unconscious, and she had drowned.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a lot of fun. Um,
No.
I know very little about the upper. I'm sure I've had a guest or two on the show over the last 120 people I've interviewed. But walk me through a trip from St. Paul to Cairo.
Okay. So generally speaking, you're gonna uh, do tow work either above or below the Pig's Eye Bridge. Um, the Pig's Eye Bridge is not exactly set the best spot. You can go down through either span, the shore span or the upper span. Most people use a tug. A lot of the old timers will get through there without one. Um, you come down through there, and you just got a lot of tight, narrow turns down to Lock Two, and you get through um, Gray Cloud and all that stuff up there. You got Freeborn Island's always kind of a challenge. Um, Used to when I was on deck, you'd was nothing to take 15 out of there, and nowadays, people still take 15 out, but it's not as common as it used to be. Come down through, Lock Two there. That's in Hastings. You got a railroad bridge and a highway bridge right below it. So it'd be highway bridge, then railroad bridge. And those can get hairy. I usually in higher water will flank that. The highway bridge sets me up better for the railroad bridge. I don't have to run as much of a race. And come down around the corner to Prescott, and then you just got a bunch of slow turns down to basically down to Diamond Island there. You make a right hand down and around the corner to Lock Three, which is just north of Red Wing. Red Wing can be kind of a bear. The lock's not too bad. The lock's pretty easy. But Red Wing, it's you get a lot of recreational traffic there, and unfortunately, everybody knows recreational boaters don't know the rules as well as they ought to, and don't abide by them even if they did. So it can be a challenge. There's a lot of times, I've steered around Red Wing Bend plenty of times, and I find the older I get, the more I just, if I got the water to do it, because it gets pretty slow up there, but I'll flank around there just because it gives me more time to react to what the other boaters are doing. You got a marina right there on the left descending shore, and then for whatever reason, the Corps of Engineers allowed them to build a dock for the excursion vessels to go in. So if you get an excursion vessel like the Duchess or the American Queen in there, they take up quite a bit of room, and so then you have less room to work with. You got to stay off the marina. It can make things challenging, especially you start getting pleasure boaters thrown in the mix and whatnot. Uh, then down from there, you basically you have some slaloms to go through to get into the Lake Pepin. It's probably one of my favorite places to fly my kites. I usually take a kite or two with me on the boat, and I get out in the lake. There's usually pretty good wind. I can get almost all of my 1,000 foot reel up in the air. So um, it's generally what I do to try to relax a little bit. Down from there, you'll have some more slow turns down to Wabasha, and then after that, you got Lock Four, which is in Alma. I actually thought about buying a house in Alma once. It's one of my favorite towns on the upper. They have a really good bakery there. One of the one of my lead guys always gives me crap because he says I know where all the food is all the way up down the river. So they have a really good bakery there. So um, used to have a power plant. They've dismantled that. It's just below the lock. Um, that pool can be the pool below four can be challenging at times, especially when it gets shallow. But it's not too terrible. You come down around, you got a lot of really beautiful bluff views from Lock 11 up, really. If you like bluffs and nature, I mean, it is. One of my coworkers calls it God's country, and Lock 11 is the gateway to God's country. So it's very beautiful, especially in the fall. You'll have these fog banks just rolling down the bluffs and into the river about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Um, so nonetheless, you get down to Lock Five. Next one down from there is 5A. 5A can be kind of a bear to get into, especially in high water. There's always an outdraft there. Um, Now you got Riverview tug service up there. It makes it a lot easier because you got a tug that's usually there ready to go. And then below there, you've got Winona. That's usually a tow work stop. Most companies will stop there and pick up or drop off. And then from there, you go down. You got Lock 6 in Trempolo. Also a good restaurant there in Trempolo. A few miles up the river there, you can actually see it from the river. The great cod. Their buffet is amazing. Their beef tip sandwich is pretty good. I'm a food guy, in case you didn't notice, but spent some time there. It's a great town. The next one down is get into Lock 7. That's in La Crescent, Minnesota, across the river from La Crosse. Spent a lot of time there. Know a few guys there. That's a great town. You do just about anything you want to do there. There's all kinds of partying, or you can relax. There's just a great place. There's a little market there when you leave the lock and you head south towards the Crescent. There's a place called Bauer Market, and they make this apple fritter bread that is just amazing. And they've got local honey, and I'm a big fan of local honey, but they've got this wildflower honey. It's just amazing. Um, Sorry, I don't know why I keep talking about food, but that's you leave there. The next big town's Brownsville. That's also a nice town. Beautiful place to be. Some really cool architecture if you like looking at houses. And then the next lockdown is Lock 6. Hey, let's go down. There we go. Lock 6. That one's in Genoa. That one's a pretty easy lock to get into. Pretty easy lock to check into if you're wanting to practice. Um, then you got next one down from there would be Lock 9. And then after that, you got Lock 10, which is in Guttenberg, Iowa. And Guttenberg always seems to have something going on. They've got just seems like they've always got something going on, either a fair or some kind of get together, whatever. The people in that town, they're always utilizing their riverfront, walking up and down, and just I've been there a few times. I got a pretty good ice cream parlor there. Um, get down to Loch 11. That's in Dubuque. There's a park called Eagle Crest Park above the loch, like right above the loch. There's a big bluff there, and I think it's $1 to drive up there, or you can walk for free. It's worth the $1. The views are amazing. The ability to get a bird's eye view of a boat coming in and making a lock, if that's something you're into, don't go to the lock to watch a boat come in. Go up to Eagle Crest. That's a far better place. Um, it's beautiful. You leave there, and you got a few bridges. You got the railroad bridge, which is kind of in a weird spot. Because when you're southbound, you go through it, and you have to flank over to get in front of the highway bridge below it, and then go. Um, in the old days, some guys with smaller toes would take the Iowa side, and they'd run down through there, and then they'd run the auxiliary span. I, for one, am not gutsy enough to try that. I've seen it done. I know it's possible, but I'll just stick with the nav span. But you come down through there, and then you have a pretty good run down to Loch 12. And it's not too bad until you get to Fever River. That place shallows up quite a bit. It just doesn't seem to stay well. You get down around there, and you get into Bellevue, and Bellevue also really good town. Grandpa's Parlor is a great place to go for breakfast. I recommend the Mount Rushmore. If you're into uh, patty melts, then go to Richmond's. But I've spent a lot of nights there. I painted a few boats there at Loch 12, and um, I've spent a lot of time in Bellevue. It's a great little town, very very peaceful. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, but it's a nice town. You run south of there, and that's a pretty long run down to Loch 13. You've got quite a few interesting things. There's an old army depot there. They say it's not an active depot anymore, but they still got signs up, and everything says don't land here. No trespassing government property and whatnot. Um, Below that, you'll have Savannah, Illinois, and Sebula, Iowa. They're right next to each other, and that's where the Sebula Railroad Bridge is. That bridge can be a pain in the rear. It's a tight, narrow one. It's once you know how to set up for it, it's really not that bad, but it can be a pain sometimes. There's a tug there that's usually available. I don't think I've ever been down through there where the tug wasn't available, but a lot of people use the tug there. It's cheap insurance. So, and then you have a run down there through what some people call the stump field, although the pool above Loch 11, some people call that the stump field too. So, but Loch 13, that's just north of Clinton, Iowa. Loch's actually in Fulton, Illinois. Fulton's kind of a small town. Clinton's got a lot of stuff there. They've got a giant milling facility, and just all kinds of stuff there. There's big fleeting operation there as well. So you come out of the lock, you got two bridges before you get to the railroad bridge. Um, that one, again, a lot of people use a tug. It's not usually a difficult bridge to make. I think just looking at it, it kind of makes people nervous, and that probably makes it more difficult. But pretty easy flank. I flank a lot of the bridges. I tend to be a flanking guy more than a steering guy. But anyways, you come down around Clinton through Comanche, Iowa, and you get down to LeClaire. That's where the Twilight's at. One of these days, I'll go for a ride on there. It's kind of on my bucket list. I really like that boat, and Kevin Steyer does a good job taking care of it. Um, if I get lucky enough to get lock delay, usually wait right above the twilight there on the right descending shore, and there's a little ice cream shack there. And if you really, really need a pork tenderloin sandwich in your life, that's the place to go. So I regularly will send the guys over, and I'll call ahead and make an order, and tell the cook to take the day off. We're having pork tenderloins and ice cream. So it's one of my favorite spots. I try to at least once a year go there. So you come around the corner after that, and you come down to Lock 14. Um, not a hard lock to make really. There's a tug there, and a lot of times you use the tug just to help you get off the wall on the lower end. Getting in, it's sometimes easier than getting out of it southbound. In higher water, there's a really hard set to that long wall, and when you have the tug there to just help you get some point, it really helps you get off there without having to run a race with nothing. Um, Down through there from 14 down to basically Bettendorf. It's often called the Rock Cut. The reason it's called the Rock Cut is because it used to be nothing but waterfalls, and the Corps of Engineers came in and blasted a channel through there, and you definitely don't want to get out of the channel in the Rock Cut because you will sink something. There's actually a waiting spot down there. It's a little island. It's called Dynamite Island. The reason it's called Dynamite Island because that's where the Corps of Engineer stored all their dynamite when they were blasting the channel. In the real old days, you could only go up through there during high water. So we kind of lucky nowadays. We don't have to wait for high water to transit through there. So, and that's why pilots were really important back then. They would know their section of the river, and they would get boats through. So you come downriver from there, you got Bettendorf. They just put a new bridge up a couple years ago. They finished it, I think, last year. Um, and after that, you got Lock 15 at Arsenal Island in Rock Island, Illinois. It's a military base. They have the oldest I guess, double decker bridge. So the government bridge there is on the lower end of the long wall. It's was built by the government. It has rail on top and car traffic on the bottom, and it's the first and oldest one on the Mississippi River, and um, it's got a lot of history behind it. I'm not 100% sure, but I thought somebody said that Abraham Lincoln was the one that approved the expenditure on that, which doesn't surprise me because it's a railroad bridge, and everybody knows Abraham Lincoln was a lawyer for the railroad, so that's why they have a lot of the privileges that they have. So after that, you leave out of there, and you got a pretty good stretch down to Lock 16. Pretty peaceful stretch. Some nice views there. Um, you get through Lock 16. You come through Muscatine, Iowa. Um, they got a highway bridge there. Down around a lot of fleeting there too. There's actually above 16 there in Buffalo. You got a lot of fleeting there as well. Um, So you get down to 17, it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, New Boston. I definitely recommend that you have a full tank of gas before you leave town to go to the lock, because if you get turned around, it may take you a little bit to get back. So then you get down to Lock 18, that's in Burlington. Um, Burlington's a decent town. Got a lot of good places to eat there as well. That starts to be the end of where I know where to go out to eat in case you're curious. So, but yeah, it's there's good fleeting operation there in Burlington. Real good guys there, usually pretty quick, skilled, knowledgeable guys. After you get done with 16 or Burlington, I mean, you go down to Keokuk, Lock 19. Between Keokuk and 19 is the second double decker bridge, which is in Fort Madison. And that's again, it's got rail across the top and car, or no, I'm sorry, rails across the bottom, cars are on top. If I'm thinking that's correct. Yeah, I think that's correct. So that one is a toll bridge. You have to pay to go over that. It's privately owned bridge. So, but you get down to Keokuk, and that is the first of your 1,200-foot locks. Everything above that is 600 foot. So there's a tug to help you get in there. The setup there is kind of funny. You got it's a hydroelectric plant on your left ascending side, and you can actually go online and see what they're running, and that'll kind of give you an idea how much of a draw you have to that side of the river. But there's no real long wall on the upper end. You have two small bullnose walls really. And in the old days when I was deckhand, they would run the head on the shore. You'd hear the rocks hitting the barges. You'd be rubbing the rocks the whole way down, and there's a curved wall that goes into the lock, and you just get that head on that wall, and you'd run it down that curved wall, and then right before you got into the bullnose wall, you catch a line and hold that head, let the captain straighten his toe up, and when he's ready, turn it loose and go right in. Nowadays, you're pretty lucky. You got a tug outfit there. They're excellent. They pretty much run the tugs the rest away from Lock 19 down to I think 22, and they do an excellent job. They got a fleeting operation there in Quincy. But yeah, that's your 1,200-foot chamber. It's a pretty decent sized drop. That lock can be a pain in the ass to get into northbound, um, but they have a little dog leg there, and they also have a swing span bridge on their lower end. I've never seen it in operation. I don't even know if it still works, but um, so there's that. Down below there, you got Lock 20, which is in Canton, Missouri. And then the next one down would be 21, which is in Quincy. That's where the fleet is there. Canton Marine Towing's pretty. Those guys know what they're doing. They're one of my favorite fleets. They're quick. They jump on you, make life super easy. After that, you got go down to Hannibal, Missouri, which is a beautiful town. They also have an overlook. They're just outside of their downtown area. They have a little stern wheeler there called the Mark Twain. I recommend if you get a chance to go on their dinner cruise, it's worth it. Also, a lot of good pork tenderloin places there in Hannibal. So then down from Hannibal is Lock 22 in Silverton. And then after that, you got Lock 24, which is in, oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank. It's just south of Louisiana, Missouri. It's Clarksville. I should know Clarksville. I lived in Clarksville, Tennessee for a little bit. So Clarksville, Missouri. And then after that, you've got Lock 25. And that's the last of the 600-foot chambers on the upper. And then after that, your next stop is in Alton, be Lock 26. That's the first of the 1,200 footers. Some people probably don't know Lock 25. They're currently in the process of converting it to a 1,200-foot chamber as well. They say it's going to take about 10 years, but we'll see how that goes. So, anyways, after 26, then you got 27. 27's right there above St. Louis. You come out of 27 and you got a whole slew of bridges to make. You come out of the canal there, and you can call traffic all you want. I guarantee somebody's going to, you could tell them you're stopping or you're coming through town. It doesn't matter. Somebody's going to ask you what you're doing because, they get busy. There's a lot of fleeting in St. Louis. Um, it's a pretty busy harbor. You know, anyways, you get through St. Louis, and the next big town that you come to is Cape Girardeau, but there's a bunch of towns in between there. You've got Herculaneum, and you got Chester and Grand Tower, and a bunch of towns. Grand Tower. That's this last trip. That was with the low water. That's a swift hole right now, or at least it was when I was on. Tucker Point's putting out pretty good, and it's kind of tricky if you're not paying attention to what you're doing. So, but you get done with Cape, and that's pretty much that's the last of the big cities till you get down to Cairo and Wycliffe, which those aren't really big cities. So, but Cape just below there, you got Gray's Point. That's typically a flank. A lot of people flank that. Heck, I even see unit tows flanking it. Sometimes I've never run a unit tow, so I don't know what the motivation there is. I think if I had a unit tow, I'd probably steer it, but you never know. It's a comfort thing. So right below there, you got the Thebes Railroad Bridge, and that thing can be a pain in the rear too in high water. Right now, my last time down, it was I laid off that left hand pier quite a bit just because it just wasn't pushing me out like it normally does. So, but got a couple of good turns down below there. Slide and toe head can be a bear sometimes. Depending on whether you get on the reds too much or you aren't getting on them enough. It's kind of a you know iffy thing there. So get down through there. You got scutters and um, on down. Antelope, and you got the Pond Lily I-57 highway bridge. I remember the captain that steered me, he was adamant that I always call it the Pond Lily Bridge. And I was like, it's the I-57 bridge. Nobody calls it the Pond Lily Bridge. And to this day, I've looked everywhere. I've Googled it. I've tried to find where the hell this bridge is called the Pond Lily Bridge. And I can't find it anywhere. But nonetheless, when I call traffic, I always call the Pond Lily I-57 bridge just in case. And it's a good thing to do anyways, because, if you know all of the old names, when an old timer calls traffic, you're going to know where he's at. And if you know all the old names, and you're using them, it keeps the heritage alive, the tradition, and it also helps some of the old timers, because they may not, really care or know that it's the I-57 bridge. They just know it's the Pond Lily Bridge. So,
If you leave out of St. Paul with 15, number one, how many miles do you cover to get to Cairo and how long does it take?
oh well, that's about 838 miles, somewhere around there. If you leave out with 15 nonstop, you could be down in Cairo in a week. Now
And
that obviously depends on delay. I mean, if you have a lot of traffic, it's going to obviously slow things down. But you could do a week and a half.
well, what kind of tow work is required at each of those locks, if any?
So if you got 15 of them at a 600-foot lock, you'll shove in with your first nine, and then you'll break the coupling. The way we usually lay the coupling in a way that makes it easy to break it apart. We'll short tier our breast wires. That way, all we have to deal with is our breast wires, or not our breast wires, our 4.5 wires. And once they break the coupling, we'll back out with the six. They'll raise it up or down. If it's down, usually they'll flush it out. If it's up, then they'll usually use a cable to pull it out, and then they'll raise or lower the chamber. You'll come in, go up or down, shove back out, re-square that coupling, lay the wires, and then get on your way. That's the reason why the Arkansas River is not a 15 barge river, because once you get above Little Rock, they don't have tow haulage gear. So they don't have the ability to pull your first cut. So when you make a lock there, you do what they call the Oklahoma double. And that's where you'll shove in with six, break it off, back out to the lower end of the long wall, tie off your toe, come out of toe, come up between the bank and your toe, in between the bull nose and in the lock, remake that coupling, go up or down, shove it out, and then you'll back the boat back in, back around your toe, get face back up, shove it in, lock up or down. It takes 3.5 to 4 hours over on the Arkansas River above Little Rock. It's really kind of a pain. It's not fun at all for the deck crew. But the upper for 600-foot locks, they really have it down. The lock guys over there, they know what they're doing. They're easy to work with. They're consistent. Just about every lock up there does everything the same way, and that really helps speed up the process. When you get on a river where the locks are not uniform in the way that they operate, it really does make things difficult. And the fact that the upper is able to do that, considering the upper is in three different districts, it's technically in four different districts, but you got St. Paul district, you got Rock Island district, you got St. Louis district, and then the lowest part of the upper is actually in Ohio Valley district. Um, so it's amazing that they're able to maintain that uniformity.
Any interesting stories come to mind of your time as a steersman and or posting new rivers?
Um, Man, the whole experience was a challenge, that's for sure. My best friend was steering at the same time on another boat, and I made the fatal mistake of comparing his experience with my experience. Don't ever do that. Just worry about what you're doing. There was a period of time there where I definitely didn't think that I was going to make it. The guy that steered me, if it wasn't for him, I probably never would have got steered. He was a mentor, good friend for about 12 years. I never actually worked with him prior to steering with him. I just knew him. Um, he'd kind of reached out and made contact with me years and years before because we had something in common. Um, we both we both were gay, and I kind of struggled to find somebody that was willing to steer me. I I kind of shot myself in the foot a lot. There's a lot of people that they have these little tips and tricks on how to get promoted, and my in my experience, the what I always tell when people ask me how to succeed in this industry and how to get promoted, and my suggestions always keep your mouth shut, do your job to the best of your ability every day, and only worry about what you're in charge of. And I was kind of a mouthy young man. I let my mouth dig a lot of holes for me, and that uh, made getting promoted a lot more difficult than it already was. Um, without having Jim, steer me, I mean, he took a big risk because he's not he's kind of like me. Like he's not out. I mean, if you ask him, he'll tell you, but you gotta bring it up. He's not gonna tell you. So and I tried to do that myself. Most of my career I tried to stay in the closet. One of the big factors for me leaving the fleeting operation was because I had been outed, and life became difficult, and I needed a move. So I went to the shuttle boats, and again, a few months after that, I was outed, and it was I put up with it for a little while, and then I made another move, went to line boat side, and um, I don't know. I must be blatantly obvious. I don't think that I am, but I must be because I was outed again. Somebody had figured out what fleet I came from, and they knew that the gay guy from the fleet had made a transfer, so they put two and two together. And at that point, I figured, well, I'm going to quit running from it, and I'm just going to own it. And I didn't do it in a very respectful way. I don't think I was kind of in your face. I felt like if you're going to make me uncomfortable, I'm going to make you uncomfortable back. And that wasn't a choice I'm proud of. I wish that I had done it differently, but I was in my 20s. I was young and stupid, and I mean, not that I'm that much older now, but anyways, it just I made a lot of mistakes, but I did a lot of things that I'm proud of. I I feel like I change people's viewpoints a little bit. People don't necessarily. I guess one of my biggest gripes is, the stereotyping. They just assume, that because of this, this is what's going to be, and that's not the case. I worked, I worked my ass off. I paid for it. I mean, my back's not in the greatest shape, and my shoulders are destroyed, and my body definitely took a beating for all the work I did. I mean, I'd carry a 300-foot lock line just to show them that I was tougher than they were by myself. I had no problem putting the old sounders in by myself or carrying them by myself. You know, um, and I had a little bit of a temper, and the madder I got, the harder I worked, just because that was the only way I could, I guess, make myself feel better. Was I had to be better than everybody else, and it's kind of nice, now that I'm established, for the most part, that I don't have to do that. I still struggle with that every day, trying to do my job to the best of my ability every day. And sometimes it rubs people the wrong way. And it's not because I'm gay. It's because of the way that I work. I regularly will do tow work with my boat. It's 145-foot long Jeff boat. It's not exactly the best boat to be doing tow work with, but instead of sitting and waiting on delay, I'll get stuff done, and I know that irritates people. Um, and part of me still feels like I have to prove myself. Um, but I think that everybody should. I mean, I we get paid to do a job, and that's what I'm here to do. I've had experiences in the past where people suggested that I should probably find a different career, or that it may not be safe for me. And I proved them wrong. I didn't want to leave this industry because the people in this industry are great people. I've worked with some very amazing people, and some of those people I don't share similar viewpoints with. And that's I feel like that's a problem nowadays, is that people feel like they can only associate with people that they have similar viewpoints. And I mean, I have friends that are Democrats. I have friends that are Republicans. I have friends that are atheist. I have friends that are Jewish and Christian, and I don't necessarily share viewpoints with any of those people, but nonetheless, they're my friends and I care about them. And most of my close friends uh, are towboaters or people that work in the maritime industry. I mean, my best friend, Jerome Price, he was a senior assistant engineer on nights at the casino I worked with. And I still talk to him all the time. He's still very much a figure in my life. His wife is one of my best friends. His family is my family. You know, uh, Robert Lester, another chief engineer I worked with. I just saw him, this last week down in Louisiana. And he's a great guy. He's the reason that I started down this road. I mean, he told me to stay away from the oceans and stay away from oil and gas. He said, oil and gas is not reliable. Go find you a good barge job. They'll take care of you. And he wasn't wrong. He's always been supportive, always had my back, always willing to tell me when I'm screwing up, and that's the atmosphere that I like about towboating. Yeah, some of the guys can be harsh and crass, but most of the time they'll be honest with you, whether you like it or not. And if you're too soft to take that advice, that's really your problem. And that's one thing. When I was younger, I didn't heed the advice that I got real well. Although I don't feel like I was at a place to hear it. I mean, it's kind of like I always talk to people about getting promoted, right? when I was a deckhand, I thought that I could do the watchman's job or the lead man's job, and I knew it. I've been a deckhand for 10 years. And then I became a lead man and actually had to do the job. And I did know what I was doing, but I didn't have the confidence, and it was hard, and I had a lot to learn. And it taught me a lot of things. I mean, there's a watchman that I didn't get along with. I'd been rode up several times by this guy, and when I became a watchman, I started to see things the way that he did. And although I don't agree with his management style, I understand why he did things the way that he did, and it changed my whole outlook. And the same thing happened every time I got promoted. When I went to being a mate, I'm ready for this. And then all of a sudden, no, I'm not ready for this. And then I started seeing things about, the way that my mates would do things. And then I understood. And there's a lot to say for experience. Yeah, you could be good at what you do. Um, but unless you're actually in those shoes doing that job, it's hard to say how you would feel about it. And I think if people were a little bit more open-minded, and I'm not talking about the LGBT stuff, but just in general, being more open-minded, trying to live life through other people's shoes. I mean, that's a lot of times when I have issues with crew members and we have to have a conversation, it's I try very hard to put myself in their shoes, because it generally, if I try to see it from their point of view, even if I still feel they're wrong, um, that empathy and the ability to try to understand them and come to a mutual understanding is helpful. It's respectful. Don't get me wrong. I kind of miss the old days some days. I mean, I remember I had this captain that I worked with in the fleet, and he was a major hard ass. I mean, from day one, I was a stupid fish head MFer, and you couldn't do that today, right? You couldn't do that today. And I remember one time I made him so bad, he slung that window open, and it kept going right off the tracks. And I always told myself, man, one of these days I'm going to be a captain. I'm going to be able to do that. And nonetheless, I knew I was doing good because he quit calling me a stupid fish head and started calling me a fuckface, which I'm sorry about the cussing, but that's towboating. Today, that gets you fired. And back then that was, but there was a day, and I don't even remember what I did, but he's like, "Hey, Brandon, can you go up to my truck and grab something?" I don't remember what it was, and I was just like, "Is he talking to me? Is he talking to? Holy shit, he knows my name." And that's when I knew I was doing a good job, because I gradually moved up. And although it's not what we consider to be respectful nowadays, working on a towboat's a hard life, and you kind of have to be a hard person to live that life. Um, and he wasn't treating me any different than he did anybody else. I mean, he treated everybody that way. That's just how he communicated. I for one tend to read a lot of management books. I read one called Permission to Screw Up. I believe it's by Caitlin Hadid, and it just talks about um, generational differences and how to manage different generations and whatnot. And there is a better way. I mean, um, that way with that captain worked for me, because I'm the type of person that likes that work atmosphere, but not everybody's that way. And although it does work, it doesn't work well with everybody. And so I generally tailor my management styles to be different for the different crew members that I have, because I've got a deckhand that's a Navy veteran. He's getting up there in age, and he's He's a boomer slash Gen Xer. He's right there on that line, and then I've got a bunch of millennials and Gen Xers, and they're all motivated by different things. And even in their subcategories, you want to talk about Gen Xers. Well, not all Gen Xers are motivated by the same thing because they weren't all raised the same way, or have different beliefs or come from different backgrounds. Every person's motivated by something different. And when you can figure out what motivates them and what makes them happy, then you can start to build a happy environment on a boat.
Well, we're kind of covering your story in reverse here, but fill me in your time from deck to steersman. And I think you said 3 times being outed, how that affected you professionally. And was your personal safety ever really in question?
So the job we do in general is not the safest job in the environment in the world. So I mean, we have people who fall overboard and die from line strikes or health issues or all kinds of stuff. So I wouldn't say that I was never. I mean, anytime you step on a boat, you run the risk. From an assault, I've been on boats where guys got into disagreements and things got out of hand. Um, I think that is just life. I think that is um, possibility, regardless whether you're gay, straight, or whatever. Um, I don't feel like my life was ever in harm's way because of who I am outside of work. Were there people who didn't like it? Yeah, sure. There was lots of people that didn't like it. There's still people that don't like it. Um, some of those people don't like it because I personally made them not like it because I was a smartass. Um, you know, uh, Looking back, I don't feel like I needed to transfer. I felt like that was a choice I made because I was running from something I wasn't necessarily happy about. I was still very much religious when I was still working in the fleet and struggling with my relationship with my creator. And it's you can only pray about something for so long and not get an answer, and then you kind of give up on it. So when I went to line boats, that was a multifaceted decision. I mean, I wanted to go for a lot of reasons. It wasn't just because I was outed. I mean, that played a role because when you're comfortable not having everybody know about your life, then you're kind of comfortable about that. A lot of people will tell you I'm a social person, but at heart, I mean, I'm happiest when I'm out in the middle of the woods by myself, camping by myself. Preferably if there's a risk I might get mauled by a bear, that's where I'm happiest. I just so I get a little flustered a lot with questions and with things that I like repeating myself. I'm not really big into repeating myself. So when I get the same question multiple times, it gets frustrating, and sometimes I don't handle it well. And sometimes like the person asking the question isn't necessarily being vindictive or crude in any way. And that's the thing. Like a lot of people, like I don't care about the jokes. I really don't. I think some of them are funny. I was always raised to believe that if you can't have a sense of humor about yourself, then you can't joke about anybody else. And I come from a family full of jokesters, so I like to joke. So I'm very, very willing to. You can tell the difference when somebody's telling a joke or when they're being a jerk. Um, and I usually will treat those people differently. But like a common question I would get, and I got tired of answering it. But how do you know if you've never been with a woman? And my answer was always the same. Well, okay. How do you know you're not gay if you've never been with a man? And their response is, "Oh, that's gross. That's disgusting. Oh, I would never," and it's like, okay, well, I have the same answer then. I mean, a lot of these questions that I got asked over the years, if they would just ask themselves the same question in reverse, they'd have my answer. But that was the other big thing is, I don't really like being made um, an object or a symbol. I don't know what you want to rephrase it as, but um, I don't speak for the LGBT community. I speak for me. So what I say is for me, and what they say is for them. I don't agree with 100% of what they put out. That's not. You know, uh, I mean, I'm pretty diverse in my range of views. I mean, I voted for Obama and I voted for Trump. So I mean, my viewpoints are. I'm open-minded quite a bit. So I can tell you that I struggle more with the gay community than I do with towboaters. I mean, I get more crap from from gay people for voting for Trump than I have ever gotten from towboaters for being gay. Don't get me wrong, you have your one asshole here or there, um, but you'll have that on any boat about any issue. I mean, I had two deckhands. One was a Baptist and one was a Catholic, and they had a disagreement that went way further than any disagreement I've ever had. And that's not even a gay straight thing. That's a religion thing. So, you know, um, it's just life. People um, get heated about things they're passionate about, and lucky for me, I haven't had those issues. I mean, I've been assaulted on a boat before, but it was due to my smart ass, and more than it was due to um, being gay. I'm very much a lead by example kind of person, and my supervisor was very much a do as I say, not as I do kind of guy, and I decided to teach him a lesson, and that lesson didn't go over so well. So like sometimes it's kind of like I said, keep your mouth shut, do your job to the best of your ability, and only worry about what you're in charge of. And believe me, you do those things, and you'll get promoted. Um, if I would have just been good at my job and quit worrying about his job, it would have been fine. But so yeah, getting outed was probably more traumatic when I got outed by my mother. Um, she did it. She did it to. She was trying to help. She told my dad that I was gay. I wasn't ready for that. I My parents were supportive in their own way. It took them some time to adjust. Um, it's it, I my family's not the closest. We don't really get around, and I'm sorry. We don't. I go camping with my parents occasionally in the wintertime. My brothers are one's in the Navy, one's one's in the well, he's not in the army anymore. He's was in the army, retired, and or not retired, but got out and became a police officer, and then retired from that. My sister's in Indiana. Uh, I think a lot of the distance, at least on my end, is just my work schedule. I get pretty busy. When I get off the boat, I tend to trip and work a lot. So, but yeah, no, it's I've had my ups and downs with working on the river, but it's been more positive than negative, I would say. Like I said, towboaters in general, they're a rough, gruff kind of group of people to work with, and once you realize that that's just how they are, it's not hard to figure out how to get along.
Before I jump to a couple of questions that are more my own curiosity regarding your personal life and sexual predisposition, Um, what has this industry meant to you? Obviously, as an alternative to police work, but over the years, how has this kind of shaped your life?
Well, I mean, when I started, it was just a job. It was a means to an end, a way to pay for school, pay bills, have fun. In I think it stayed that way for quite a while. In 2013, I had an accident and at home, and I ended up losing my thumb and part of my middle finger, and my index finger no longer functions the way it's supposed to. And that was the first time that I had to fight to keep my job. I mean, even with all of uh, all of the stuff that had gone on before, I took me 5.5 months before my hand healed enough to where I could start working on coming back to work, and then I had to prove that I could come back to work. My safety manager at the time was nice enough to send me some Kevlar face wire, just a section of it, so that I could practice splicing. And it was difficult to relearn how to do that stuff. And that's when I came back to work. I mean, I was a deckhand, and I got it to where the company let me come back to work, and I worked my ass off and to prove again that I could do my job, and I had to prove to myself that I could do my job, because I there was a long time there where I just didn't think that I was gonna be able to do it. Um, I it's actually kind of funny because when you run out of ratchet, you're holding it and you're spinning the barrel, right? And a lot of people will go to check the threads by doing this. They'll hold that up, and they'll check the threads. Well, I'm left-handed, so I went to check the threads, and I don't have that thumb to check the threads anymore. And I looked around real quick because I was hoping nobody saw it, and everybody, it's like they knew. They all saw it, and they were all laughing their asses off. And they're like, "Oh, missing a few inches there, aren't we, Brandon?" And it's like, yeah, yeah, I was. So, those guys, they you could call it mean or cruel or whatever, but they'd step on my shoelaces and untie my shoes, so they have to watch me, and they'd take the tape and they'd mash it down real, make it hard for me because I'm still doing stuff with my left hand, and if it wasn't for those guys, I never would have made it back on deck. I mean, everything that they did, I mean, I know they were just joking around, having a good time, but everything that they did helped me get better at my job, helped me feel good about being back at work, made me more comfortable, and that's around the time when I learned the whole keep my mouth shut, work as hard as I can every day, and do the, only worry about what I'm doing. And it right around then, 2013 is when I started really kind of caring about what I do, and that's when I started paying attention to the history and tradition of what I do. And I really started to love working on the river. When it's amazing, when you really just stop worrying about what's out of your control and you just worry about what you're doing. You start opening your eyes to what's going on around you. You start seeing things, the beauty of the job that we do. The confidence that job gives you. I mean, I wasn't the greatest mate on the river, but I was pretty good, and I was really good at paperwork. And it I was confident, and it just I started being proud of the work that I was doing. I started seeing what my dad had always told me about, take pride in your work and it'll bring you happiness, and stuff like that. And just a lot of things. I mean, I've done a lot of different things. I've got a lot of different experiences. I mean, I've worked on casino boats. I worked on a mule drawn ferry. I've worked on tugs, worked on line boats. I've done all these different things. And as Jerome would say, and Chief Robert would say, all those experiences, they're like toolbox or tools in a toolbox. And more experiences you have, the more tools you have, the better equipped you do your job. And um, when I started getting to where I understood that I was good at this and that I could be better, is when I started really loving it. When I got in the wheelhouse, I hated life. It was when I was a steersman, it was just uh, I didn't know what I was doing. The whole time you're a deckhand all the way up to mate. You think to yourself, oh, how hard could it be? How hard could it be? And and I even had experience. I went to work part time in 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. Um, Maybe it was even earlier than that, but I was painting boats for the tug service up in Bellevue, and um, if it wasn't for him, I don't think I ever would have made the push to go. Jeremy Putman, I don't think I ever would have made the push to get my license. He kind of pushed me to do it, and then he gave me the ability to. Without him, I never would have learned how to drive tugs, and I pretty well had my license before I got in the steersman's program. And had been driving tugs for a little bit before I got in the steersman. So I still I had an idea of what I was doing, but going from putting boats on the wall at a lock to moving 15 barges, 25 barges, that's a big difference. And I struggled with that a lot. I had a few accidents that really made me nervous and made it hard for me. But I got over them and moved on. Eventually became a pilot, and that's that. First year was rough, as it is for most new pilots. Because you don't have that guy standing behind you to tell you when you're screwing up. You have to figure that out on your own. And I was a pilot for about 4 years, and then I got my captain's position, and I I liked being a pilot. I have a lot of days where I kind of want to be a pilot again. Um, the biggest thing that makes me enjoy my job now or love my job now is I got a crew that just is amazing. I couldn't do half the things I do without the crew that I have. I mean, my chiefs are top notch. My mates are great. My watchmen's are good. My deck crew in general is good. I've got two amazing cooks. I'd argue that I got two of the best cooks on the river. So and everybody just gets along. I mean, we cut up quite a bit. We razz each other. Give each other a hard time, but it's all in good spirits. Everybody's pretty open with each other. We uh, another book I read was called Braving the Wilderness by Brene Brown. And she talks about managing and having the hard discussions and being upfront about it. And my guys have really they do that really well. I mean, they're more than happy to come up and say, hey, look, we need to have a hard talk here, and it makes life easy, having a good crew. There's a lot of paperwork and a lot of stuff to deal with, with the office and stuff. That's not necessarily the fun part about driving a boat. And really, I mean, driving the boat, everybody, oh, that's the fun part. And it's not always, not for me at least. You know, I really enjoy seeing my guys grow. I've promoted a few that I miss. Um, I've gotten a couple back that I've promoted previously, and they found their way back to my boat. I don't know whether to apologize or thank them, but I'm glad they're here. So but yeah, it's just there's so much with the towing industry that you can fall in love with. It's hard to pin one down. I mean, the view is amazing. I mean, I get to see some awesome stuff. If you're into bird watching, there's all kinds of eagles and hawks and turkey vultures. You know, but getting on a boat uh, that has a crew that cares about the boat and the boat's history and the tradition, and just cares about one another. I mean that especially for a guy that, I mean, I don't have a tight knit family, but I do at work.
Well, I do appreciate your willingness to appear on this show and share so freely your experiences and perspective. Um, for anyone out there watching or listening this far into it that may not want to hear about some maybe more contentious issues facing society today, this might be the time to shut this down. But Brandon, if you are willing to answer this, interested in answering this, this question came to mind as we've been sitting here. Where do you stand personally on the, if I may, the pronoun patrol that seems to exist out in the ether these days? And you mentioned LGBT a few times, but not, I don't know all the letters, but the Q plus, we'll say.
Yeah. Um, so I hold pretty much a libertarian standpoint on things. Whether I agree with what you do or don't do, that is your business. So long as I keep my life out of your hair, you keep your life out of my hair. I don't care. And that's a lot of the reason why I wanted to stay in the closet is because I don't want to force my beliefs on somebody. I also don't want anybody to force their beliefs on me. Um, I guess my viewpoint on it is I get in this argument a lot with one of my close friends who's also gay, and we talk about equality and why we're still fighting for equality. And as far as the L, G, and B, I feel like we have reached equality. We we've been there for quite some time, and I think that the fight is over. Um, you can look wherever you want to look for data on whether we are, aren't, or what they're trying to do to take what rights away and this, that, and the other. I The best way I can put it is, you're equal when you can do unto others what was done unto you. And so when I was a kid, Bible thumpers were an issue, right? I mean, most of the hate that I ever got was from religious fanaticals. Um, and I don't have a problem with religion. My husband is pretty religious, and he believes in God. I still do in a way, but what I'm getting at is Bible thumpers will force their beliefs because that's what their belief is to spread the gospel, and that's great. But that's what the LGBT movement or the alphabet mafia is doing, is they are force feeding their beliefs into people's lives, and I don't agree with that. I think that we should be uh, better. We've achieved our equality. I mean, I'm married. How much more equal can I get? At some point, you have to wonder if we're looking for special rights, and I don't want special rights. I want to be treated, and that's why I like the towboat industry, because for the most part, I've always been treated like everybody else. And when I wasn't, usually somebody stepped in and said, "Hey, look, that ain't cool." So I don't I don't feel it's right to force beliefs into people's lives who don't want it. And I don't necessarily agree with all of it either. We keep fighting for I mean, gay rights was gay rights, trans and all of the other, and I don't even know what they are because I don't get involved in that stuff. That's different. That's something different from a sexual orientation. Um, you know, um, Out of respect, if somebody wants me to call them by their pronoun, I try to be respectful when I can. Um, but if you want me to automatically know what your pronoun is and call you by that pronoun. And well, that takes communication. And I'm not, unless you have it tattooed on your forehead, I can't do that. My belief is that there's two genders. I believe in science. Um, what you choose to do is your business. Um, if you don't want to hear what I have to say about it, don't ask me. And that's really as far as I can go with it. I mean, it's not necessarily something I agree with, but it's not something that, I want to outlaw or tell somebody how to live their life. I think that if that's for you, then that's for you. That's fine, so long as it's only affects you. Um, but I feel like if I was a member of the gay community, if I was not ostracized the way that I am, I would argue that we need to kind of cool it a little bit, because if we keep going down the road that we're going, we're going to create hate. Um, it's just like calling somebody a racist who's not a racist. You can only push somebody so far before you create hate in that person. And my goal would be to create community and welcoming. I mean, even if somebody was a homophobic, right? I've worked with plenty of homophobics and never had a problem with them, because we had an understanding that they were safe, and that I respected their boundaries, they respected my boundaries. And I would argue that they're not a homophobic because they're able to realize that we have different views. And that's the problem, is just it we have a lack of respect, a lack of accountability, and the internet and cell phones, all that stuff, it's all bad. Guilty, use it all the time, but it's all bad. I mean, how many times have we saw something online and didn't do a deep enough dive to find out whether it was really true? And I mean, that's just like, people were adamant that Trump uh hated the gays and was out to steal our rights. No other president spent more money than Trump did trying to end killings of gay people in foreign countries for the sole purpose of the fact that they were gay. I, how can you say he's homophobic and anti-gay if he's trying to stop other people in other countries from killing us simply for being gay? Meanwhile, you have other political groups bringing truckloads of people in this country that absolutely hate us. You want me to feel safe, but you had the Pulse nightclub shooting, and the guy flat out said that his religion felt that the most peaceful thing that he could do for us was to eradicate us. So we need to create cohesion and community, not division. And forcing your beliefs on people is just gonna that's just gonna lead to negativity, and negativity is not the way forward. Tribalization, just that's, I work with a lot of conservatives that they are diehard conservatives, won't listen to any arguments, no matter how good it is, what the proof, whatever. And that's just, that's not the way to be. What used to make this country great was the fact that we could compromise. Politicians would go into their buildings, they would argue amongst themselves, and then they would come out and nobody would win, but everybody would come out with something. And that's what made this country great. So we had the ability to compromise, and we can't do that anymore. And that the pronoun police is it's a symptom of that. It's a cause of an unwillingness to communicate and have open dialogue. And I catch myself all the time, especially on Facebook. I'll get into an argument, and I'll sit back and it's like, you know what? I'm being a dick. I'm not listening to this person and their point of view. I'm just arguing for the sake of arguing. And that's a real problem. And people do it all the time. And I try really hard when I find somebody that I disagree with to have that discussion. But it's hard for me to find people who can do so in a not so negative manner. But that's it's being human. Humans are not perfect. We never were, never will be. I mean, there's only one perfect being, and he's not here right now.
Well, as far as the pronoun police, I think is what you called them. I've only seen pronouns listed in email signatures and social media, but I think it's not a great deal of them, but I think it's all been the exact pronouns that I would apply under any normal circumstances. So that never really affected me. I've never met a person that I've misgendered or misspoken or whatever, mispronounced, whatever the
Mhm.
term should be.
Yeah.
So that's never really been a thing for me, but it seems like it's a colossal concern on social media.
So I have misgendered probably three or four people now, um, but they've always been super polite in letting me know that I had done so. And a good example of that was I had a friend of mine years ago, which he wasn't a friend at the time, he was a coworker, but wanted to know what I wanted to be called. And I said, Brandon. And that's not what he meant. He meant, what do I prefer? Gay, the F bomb, whatever. And so I was a smart ass, and so I went through, I was like, well, I'm not, a bundle of sticks. I'm not a French cigarette, so don't call me that. I'm not sciencey, so I really don't care for homo. If I had to pick anything, I prefer queer because it means odd and unusual, and that fits me to a T. So I mean, I can kind of understand the point of the pronouns thing. Um, in our industry, it's not really an issue, I don't think. Um, outside of our industry, and I guess the reason I've seen it and dealt with it more is just because I still occasionally uh, get involved with LGBT issues. And like I said, I don't have a problem with it. I have a problem with people being forceful about it. I get it that you want to be called something, and honestly, I would agree if the point you were making is that social media makes a bigger deal of it than it really is. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of issues that we face throughout this country and this world that are made to be bigger issues than they really are. Um, it depends on what side of the coin you're on and how you're looking at it. I've seen where the right will make a big deal of it. I've seen where the left will make a big deal of it, and the best that I can make of it is it's all propaganda on both sides.
You mentioned libertarianism. I'm certainly of that disposition myself, politically, religiously, everything you pretty much said. But one more question regarding these topics. What state do you live in?
I live in Oklahoma now.
And I saw on Facebook, I think you were officially married in 2020.
Yes.
Was gay marriage recognized before that?
Yes, it was. So this is my second marriage. I was married once before, in Iowa. I got married in Iowa because it wasn't legal in Illinois. So what ended up happening was my marriage just wasn't recognized in general. And when we came to get a divorce, there was no divorce to get because it wasn't a legally recognized marriage. So I can't remember when it was. I want to say it was like 2010, 2012 is when it became legal, somewhere in that area. But I really, honestly, I never really wanted to get married. I was threatened. He forced me to get married. Gave me an ultimatum. He's going to leave me unless I married him, and I love him too much to to end the relationship. So it was our wedding proposal was more of a fight than anything. I'd come home from the boat, and I had already bought the rings. He had already bought rings, and he bullied me into it really. And we were sitting on the couch, and he's like, "So are we going to get married or what?" And we just talked about it a month ago, and it's like, for crying out loud, would you give me some time? And I got mad at him, and I went to my book bag, pulled the rings out, and I threw them at him. I was like, well, if you would just leave me alone for a few weeks and let me fucking propose, I'll propose. And he grabbed his rings and threw them at me. And he's like, well, I was tired of waiting. You're taking forever. So it was it was the probably the worst way to propose to each other, but yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird. I mean, I again, I don't really believe the same thing that a lot of the gay community does. Do I want the same benefits that straight people have? Sure, I do. But most of my childhood, the LGBT community, uh, we were different. We were proud of the fact that we weren't straight people, that we weren't, breeders. We were different. And so marriage to me just seems so foreign. It's like, why do we need this? Why is this important? Because I mean, I'd already made my mind up that, it takes far more commitment to stay with somebody that you can pick up and leave and take all your shit with you than it does to stay with somebody who's going to get half your pension, half your 401k, half your stuff, take your house, probably get the kids too. In my case, the dog or the cat. I mean, I just think it takes more commitment not married. And so I mean, and that was kind of one of the big fights that we had about it. Is just that I loved him, and I don't feel like I need a piece of paper to tell him that. So for me, I just marriage gives me the ability to give him insurance and leave everything to him without having to go through a bunch of legal BS. So, I mean, there's good things about it and there's bad things about it. It just depends. It's funny because my buddy Jerome, I remember when I got married, he's like, "Well, welcome to the club. We're now equal. You can lose your shit just as much as I can." So it's always a fun conceding factor, I guess.
Yeah, man. Anything else you'd like to share before we wrap this one up?
No, not really. I appreciate you taking the time. It's been fun.
Well, no, and I thank you very much for again coming on the show and sharing your perspective. I certainly have not had this on the first hundred and however many hundred and something episodes by now. But we'll keep in touch, man. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
This has been a production of Where You At Studios, LLC.